Greetings and welcome to another episode here. I think this will be pretty quick. I'm just going to try and give a bit of an update on where things stand. I wanted to do videos really quickly, but the 3D printing is a bottleneck. Perhaps you hear the printer going in the background there. I'm not sure if it comes across. But it's not like, I guess the saying is the devil's in the details, and so there have been like multiple parts, each one taking 8 hours to print, that I've had to redo, and sometimes 2 or 3 times. So let me just kind of go over for you what's going on and then where I see this going. I mean, I thought this was going to take a long time, and it hasn't disappointed. So lots of fun. Let's take a look where we're at. So just by way of review, here's the design, the overarching theme of the design for this. And so you have a rotor here with your magnets there and another magnet there, and the coils will go on this shelf here, sandwiched between the two magnets. And this lets you take advantage of both the north and the south pole of your electromagnet. So I'll just talk about some of the problems I've run into, and also just some of the things I initially thought, and then I thought again, it's like, no, that doesn't work. Like one of the things, if you look at these supports, the way these are is, obviously they're like tapered. So this is broader here, and so the shelf comes down and then it rests on there, and then this one would rest on there. So one thing I thought was, well, maybe I could make these things threaded and then 3D print, like 2 bolts, and then that way you could move the plate up and down. I kind of got the idea, like, from having to balance the bed of the 3D printer. And that would change your air gap. But then once you look at it a little bit more, it's like, no. The whole air gap is determined by the space between this rotor and this rotor. So in other words, if that's your whole air gap. If you move this down, what you'd have to do to change the air gap would be to make this thing in the middle here threaded, and then raise this part of your rotor up or down. And the problem is, this is the rotor. So if you have threads on there, if you had an incredible machine shop or something, you could probably do it, but the most likely thing is, the first time you tried to spin this, the thing would just unscrew and fly across the room, and that wouldn't be good. So that was one thing I realized. Now, you had it right the first time there. So I think where I left off in the first video, the last video, was just printing this base plate here. And so what I came up with was, I was thinking, why do you want all that PLA there? You can save PLA, it should print faster, and so I just carved some out. And the first time I made this, oh gosh, I want to say like a 1/16 of an inch, and that was like way too flimsy, and then an 1/8 of an inch. And then, as I was saying, I think in the last video, then I started running into problems with the printer, and I couldn't figure out what was going on. And then I finally figured it out. So it's printing well again now. But I needed to make it 1/4 of an inch. So it was like, when it was a thin print, it took like 4 hours, and then 6 hours, and then 8 hours. But I wasted 10 hours because I should have just made it 1/4 of an inch. And as we'll get to, I'm going to have to do it again. I'm pretty sure. There's just a couple things that aren't quite there. But what I've been working on then, I thought I'll do the easy things first. Well, what's printing in the background is one of the ends of the rotor. But if we go, you got this, but then if we go here, this is, if you tear it all apart again, these are, kind of the parts that you're going to print. So right now I'm printing this thing, but what I wanted to get done was print the, the base, the supports, and the 2 shelves. And I've gotten that done, but I gotta redo I think I have to redo these, and I think I have to redo the base. So really all I've got is the middle and the top shelf. and each of them takes like 8 hours to print. So you can see, you know, I mean, I'm hoping, you know, maybe it's like a days and not weeks thing, but I mean, I think, to be honest, to be realistic, it's probably going to be a couple weeks till everything's printed and printed correctly. Because even after I do this, I have to print the coil scaffoldings. But let me just show you a little bit what was going on with these parts. So here's the middle piece. If we go back, here's the one that's in red there. And it looks a bit funky because I redid it so many times. But the idea here is, if you see where I'm tracing out with the mouse, that's where your coil will go. And you'll just slide the coil in, and then slide a coil in here, one there, one there. Now you know your coils are exactly 180 and 90 degrees apart. Now, originally I'd gotten rid of a lot of what I thought was excess PLA, and so the first time I printed this, I only had the coil slide into about there. I thought, oh, that's plenty of space. And then, let me see if I can do this for you. So when I looked at it, like just putting the rotor there, and these parts were actually hollow, so it was easier to see. But the long and short of it was, you couldn't slide the coils in all the way. They were a 1/4 inch off. So in other words, your coil was lined up like there instead of lined up in the center. And you know, it would have ran, but it wouldn't have ran as well as if you get it right, and it just annoyed me. So that was the first time. So then that was 8 hours down the drain. So then I did it again, and I thought, well, you know, this thing doesn't, all it's doing is being a placeholder for where the coils are going. You don't, you know, I'll make it a 1/16 of an inch thick. I'm going to chop out all of this, all of that, you know, so there's not much PLA. It'll print in, you know, like 4 hours. And sure, it did. But then I learned something new. You know, if we go back here, you're going to have an air gap there between this and where the coil is. So when I got rid of the PLA, and when I made it a 1/16 of an inch, and then I had printed the supports there and put it in, and I put a coil with wire on it, and the thing bowed down, you know, probably not quite a 1/4 of an inch, but like 1/8 of an inch. So then that screws everything up, because, you know, I'm looking for like a 3/16, not more than a 1/2 inch air gap. And so if this thing like is going down like a 1/4 of an inch, then you have like a 1/4 inch air gap there, and you got a 3/4 inch air gap on the top, so it just stunk. So then I had to, you know, all right, you know, do it again, and this time I made it a 1/8 inch thick and put in all the PLA, and now that works. So I'll show you these pieces on the cell phone just because that's what I've gotten done, but I'm going to have to reprint some more. Yeah, and just one more thing on this. I mean, there was another reason why I wanted to make this thin, because like if you look at it again, if we go back to here, you're going to have your magnet there, and then you're going to have your coil sitting above here. So let's say you made this middle plate here an inch thick. The coil's sitting on top of it, so there's no way that your air gap could be anything smaller. It would have to be greater than 1 inch. So, you know, you don't want to have this thing like 1/2 an inch. You can get away with an 1/8 inch. I tried a 1/16, but it wasn't structurally strong enough. And then here are the supports, and again, I'm going to have to probably redo these because I had to redo the other part. But the thing that you want to get right here is that this is going to be controlling the air gap, and also, you know, you don't want the thing, you know, a 1/16 inch off the ground, or, you know, it might start hitting the ground. So you got to give yourself some space there, and then mainly you have to have this and this correct, depending on, you know, where the rotor's sitting, and that'll be determined by the axle. So, you know, that that was like a little bit of spreadsheet work there to figure out where the gaps are and everything. So that's what that is. And then finally, here's the top shelf. And I thought this worked out well. It printed well, and I put just a little, you know, 1/32 indentation for a little bit of lettering there, just to give it a little flair. And that worked well. And again, if you go back, where is it? If you go back here, that's where you could, there's a couple things you could do. If this rotor's not, if you don't give yourself a lot of space here, and I don't want to, because I don't want this thing, I haven't decided on that yet. That's another thing. You could either put, you know, you're going to have some kind of sensor to see where the magnets are, and you could put in a timing wheel. I don't think you need one, especially with the Arduino. You can kind of set the sensitivity, so you don't got to worry about that. So you could either, you know, you're going to have some kind of sensor, a reed switch, a Hall effect, something like that. You could either, if you give yourself enough space here, slide it in under there, or the other thing is you could just put it up top here and catch this magnet, this set of magnets. Now the other thing you do on the top shelf here is if you want to put in pickup coils, I mean, you don't need, you know, gearing out to another rotor or something, just line them up here, and now you have a place to put all your pickup coils if you want to have fun, you know, picking up voltage that way as well. So this is the part that's printing in the background there, and this is the top of the rotor. You'll have 4 magnets in there, and a couple things about it. There's a couple things. One of the things I think could be kind of cool as long as it works. So I'd originally made this a 5-inch rotor and the magnets there, and then this was from something that someone on the channel commented, and I thought, oh yeah, that's a great idea. So while it's 5-inch rotor, if we look at this, it's actually 5 1/4 inch. So what I did is I put an 1/8 inch strip all around here just to further lock in the magnets. And maybe I should even make them, you know, like even put even more PLA to lock them in further. But you know, I don't plan on spinning this thing at outrageous speeds. But this just, you know, I'm not even going to bother to screw the magnets in, because if they're going to fall out, they're going to want to go this way, and they're held in by gravity that way. So the main thing is having this PLA locking them in. Now you can see this, and it's like, why the heck did you do that? You know, when it's done, if we bring this up, well, let's do it this way. This will go in here, and it's like, well, dummy, why didn't you just print it as one thing? But when you think about it, if you go over here, well, there's sort of a couple things. Let's put it together, and now look at it, and you got that overhang, because you need to anchor it with a second bearing there, skateboard bearing. And that overhang is like 1/4 inch, and I just haven't done enough 3D printing to really, so I don't know if you can get away with that big of an overhang, and you need that to be printed well. You can't have, you know, like a bunch of gloop on like one side, because if we go over here, you know, you're gonna end up gluing this thing onto there for your rotor. And so if it can't go on straight, then this thing is going to be tilted like 10 degrees. And so I figure it's just easier and more likely to get a good part to break it out. So now you don't have any overhangs this way. Now there's one other thing, and this was something I just thought of, which I'll have to see whether it works. You can see one thing there, and it's like, oh, you know, what did you screw up there? No, that's a little 1/16 by 1/16 indentation. And what you'll notice is it's lined up exactly with that magnet. So in other words, when you go to glue this on, if you didn't have that, and you know, I'll have to put a 1/16 going outward here, because you want the magnets here to line up exactly with the magnets there. And you could try and eyeball it, but why bother? You know, you got a 3D printer. So in other words, now I just put in one strip that's a 1/16 by 1/16 that's lined up exactly with the center of one of these magnets, and then the only way this thing can fit on will be for the magnets to be exactly lined up over each other. So that, I'll have to see if that works, but that should solve that problem. So let me just show you real quick with the cell phone now what's been done and what some of the screw-ups were, and why unfortunately this is still going to take a little while. But it'll be neat when it's done. I think it'll be pretty good, hopefully. I hope it spins. But it should do that, I think. Anyways, give me a second here. So just real quick, here's that part printing, and if it shows it here, E is how long elapsed, and then remaining, and it's saying there's 18 hours remaining. I think it'll actually be more like 9 hours. It usually gets that off. But this thing will take 10-12 hours to print. So you can see it's not good if you get it wrong. And I'll show you what I've gotten wrong and what I've gotten right. So here's this base plate, and you know, I actually didn't save much time because I printed the thing 3 times. I think I've got to print it a 4th time. It's sad, but probably worth doing. And so that's another 8-10 hours there. Here's the 2 ones that were screwed up. So here's the first one. You see, you slide your coil in there. This needed to go another 1/4 of an inch because otherwise it's not lined up with the magnets. So then I said, all right, let's do that over again. I got rid of even more PLA. And I made it thinner because I figured it's just holding the magnets, holding the coils. What do you care? So here's that, and then here's like a coil that you might use. This will be the size, although I need to reprint these because I printed them with a different printer that wasn't as good or as accurate. But you know, this will, when it's done correctly, it'll slide in there. But here's the problem. I don't know if you can really see it, but it goes down. It goes down like 1/8 of an inch or so. You can kind of see it there. Yeah, there you can see it. That doesn't work. Okay. So what I finally ended up with is this, which is a lot thicker, and I left all the PLA in. So now if we put a coil on, it's fine. So that's good. And then let's just put the top on. And you can kind of see how it's going to come together. Your rotor will be there, part of it there, part of it there, magnet, coil, 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 coil. And it should spin well. But I want to give myself more space underneath here, and I snapped one of the tops off of there just with this. And there's one other issue, is it's a little bit, rattling, and I don't give really 2 hoots about that too much because the rotational force is not really on the plates. It's between this, the bottom here and the top. But what I'm getting at, let's take this apart again. Well, before I do that, since it doesn't want to shut off, is I don't want to glue these in because, if I can leave it like this, where I just slide them in, then right now I have a rotor with 4 magnets. Now, what if I want to try one with 6 magnets? What if I want to try different magnets and do like a serpentine coil? then all you got to do is take the top off, take the rotor out, take the plate off, and put in the new rotor. So it would be nice not to glue that part in. But what I want to do now that I think about it, well, a couple things. I mean, I don't think I need to make this any thicker than 1/4 inch. I think that'll be fine, you know, unless I'm like spinning it at some crazy speed. But I could extend this up, you know, like another 1/4 inch, just so that it's a little bit snugger and more snug and doesn't rattle around. But this is where your axle will go, and that's the one where I'm going to make it one part. I'm just going to have the axle come right out of there, because otherwise, if the axle's wobbling, then the rotor's wobbling. And if I can get away with not gluing it at the top, then I can switch out rotors as this project continues to go along. So might as well make it like one piece to give it a real anchor down here, and you know, a little bit thicker and then thinner, and then boom to the top. So you know, sorry if this is taking a long time, but you know, it just is something that's taken a while, and I am actually, you know, I'm kind of starting to get excited about this stuff again as it goes along, because once this thing is done, it's going to be a pretty cool test bed. And you know, about the only thing I won't be able to change is the air gap without well, no, it wouldn't be those. You'd have to reprint the rotor itself, so that wouldn't be an easy thing to alter. But you know, look at 1 coil, 2 coils, 4 coils. I want to go back and look also, if you're grabbing the radiant, looking at single diode versus full wave bridge rectification, and you know, things like that. But it'll just be nice to have something a little more precise, because you know, really I was using something like this before, and I 3D printed the rotor, and it's all right for like 1 coil. But if you're doing more coils, I mean, you might as well do the thing as good as you can. So I was calling this thing the Mark II or whatever, like pulse motor, but it really isn't. Yeah, I mean, you know, it's really the Mark I. So I got to rename it. This will be the Mark I machine, because this, I mean, this isn't. Yeah, I 3D printed the rotor, but you can't really call it a, you know, a whole machine there. So anyways, just, you know, wanted people to know I haven't forgotten about this. It takes time, and I am working on it. And, at some point here, should have a machine with something that spins round and round, and that'll be a lot of fun. So stay tuned, and stay healthy, everyone. Have a nice rest of your week. Bye-bye.